The Game of Zen explores the often overlooked ways in which professional, personal, and spiritual growth are interrelated. We dive deep into the life teachings of the Buddha and the mindfulness practices of Zen, revealing how they can help us dramatically expand our possibilities for wholehearted work, life, and play.
Good afternoon and welcome to episode 2 of the Game of Zen podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Sensei Paul Gyodo Agostinelli. What's up, Paul? How's it going today?
It's going really well, Scott. Good to be here with you.
Awesome. So today our topic is going to be the Four Noble Truths. And as always in this episode, we'll be talking about how they can help us in our personal life and business career. And, it's been my experience since I've been learning this that it applies every day. And there's so many different ways that we can learn from these truths and bring them into our life. So let's start off, Paul, why don't you give us an overview of how it works and what it means?
Yeah, well, the Four Noble Truths are right at the core of Buddhist teachings and practice. And they're really kind of mind-blowing in a way when you really wrap your head around them. Some people call them the Four Noble Truths. Some people call them the Four Noble Opinions. They're just a way. So don't take it as like a dogmatic, this is how the world is. But when we take them as, well, this might be how things operate, so let me look into this, we find that there's a lot of real practical wisdom, in these truths. So really briefly, the first noble truth is that we experience life as suffering. Or another way to translate this word dukkha that the Buddha used is as insufficiency. So we are always experiencing the world in a way in which it's not quite right. We don't quite have enough, or we have too much of something, right? So that's right at the core of human experience is this sense of not enoughness. The second noble truth is that there's a very specific cause of this sense of insufficiency. And that cause is what is sometimes termed attachment. But it's not that we don't care about things. It's that we have a kind of an energetic relationship with things in which we're either pulling them towards us, we're craving them, or we really don't like them and we're pushing them away, or we're just ignoring them. Right. So that's really what Buddha meant by attachment, is that it's a kind of a really self-centered, preferential engagement with things in the world, whether it's feelings or people or situations, whatever it may be. We've got these preferences around it. That's what causes this feeling of insufficiency. So the third noble truth is that we can actually do something about this. We can relieve ourselves from this persistent feeling of insufficiency. And then the fourth noble truth is, well, what is that? What is that? What is that way? And that's articulated as the Eightfold Path. And there's something really interesting in kind of the architecture of these Four Noble Truths. If you look at it in like a medical analogy, you see that usually the way it goes is that you have the symptom, and then you get a diagnosis, and then you get a prescription for how to deal with, and then you get the cure, right? So that's how it goes when you go to the doctor. Well, the Four Noble Truths follow this, but there's a twist. You have the symptom, life is suffering or insufficiency. You have the diagnosis, it's being caused by the sense of attachment. But now, instead of getting the prescription, you get the cure. The cure is, we can relieve suffering. Okay, it puts it out there. And then the fourth noble truth is the prescription. Mm-hmm. So you get cure and then you get prescription. Okay, so we end with the prescription, and one of the beautiful kind of ahas from this is that, well, you never really fully cured. And it's all about practice and putting your prescription, your medicine, into practice, into effect. You take your pill, you do your, whatever it is, your medicine, you take your medicine, or you practice your medicine every day, every moment. And you continuously transform, this symptom that you're experiencing.
Yes, well done, doctor. That was great. And and certainly learning from you has been medicine for me, actually, over the last couple of years, like the things that we've talked about. And yeah, I mean, I was blown away when I first started learning about this. And starting with the first one, that life is suffering, that everybody experiences it, and just being aware of it and being, okay with it is really, a really good start on the road here, is because, we know it, but once we focus on it, we don't run from our suffering. We experience it and we try and understand why it's happening. So for me, that was a big revelation. It really it really hit home for me, what was causing things in my life that were causing suffering. So when I got to the second one and I started looking at my life and applying it to attachment, aversion, things like that, then I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's why I have anxiety. That's why I have trouble sleeping at night. And as we talk about in every episode, this applies to work and life and home life. And so for each situation that came up that would cause me some suffering, I was able to process it better and really understand what it was coming from, and then move towards the medicine or the prescription. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really good lesson. And so, you know, Paul, what are these? The problem is that we experience it, but how does it how does it come out in everyday of our lives?
Yeah, well, it's there all the time. That's the amazing thing. And when you turn your mind towards this to look and see whether this is perhaps an accurate description of what happens within, you might notice right away that, wow, you're almost continuously in this place of, oh, I'm looking for something. This moment isn't enough. I mean, when I started working with this, I know from the first second that I wake up, sometimes there's, okay, what's the problem I need to solve? What do I need to do, right now in this moment? And then throughout the day, right, entering into every given moment, every given conversation, every meeting, every engagement, there's something that I want to get out of it, or there's a condition that I'm experiencing that I'm wanting to change. Right? It operates at such a subtle level, but when I look at myself, I can see the truth of this, that there's a something that's not quite okay, not completely okay with my life, with my experience. So it really is, incredibly relevant when I start to notice, and when you start to notice the things that you're doing to manipulate your own experience, right? To change the way you feel, or to get something in your life, right? You start making these plans to uh, build your business up, or to go on vacation, or to whatever it is. There's oftentimes an inner drive that I really need this to happen in order to be okay.
Hmm.
So I found it right at the base level, relevant to every day in that way. How about you?
Well, yeah, I wanted to focus on business for a minute and the not enoughness, because the one common denominator of every business I've ever been involved with is at some point there was a feeling of not enoughness, right? And, not enough money coming in, not enough customers, not enough product, and there's always, when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build something, there's always that moment when you really want more, and it almost never goes away. I've never been in a situation where I'm completely 100% satisfied with
Right.
my business, and so I'm always trying. But at the same time, we're always striving to build a bigger business and have more. So there's that dichotomy there where we want to be happy with what we have, but as a businessman and having investors and having money at stake, we want more. And so,
Mhm.
but I think the key, and maybe you can help me with this a little bit, is like, how do we balance the fact that at the end of each day we never have quite enough, but we do have enough?
Yeah, I guess I could summarize it by saying, do you need more in order to be okay? Right? You can want more, but do you need more? And most of us are at some relatively deep psychological, emotional level. We need more in order to be okay. So if we can really ground into where we're at and the fundamental sufficiency of our moment and of our life, and then say, oh, I would like more. I want this business to thrive. I want my family to be well taken care of. I want a yacht, whatever it may be. All of it's okay. But if you need it to be okay, you've started the ball rolling of suffering, which is just going to escalate and compound.
I don't need a yacht, but I would like one though. But so maybe a raft to get to the other shore, which is a good Buddhist analogy that I've learned. And it's the definition of success and happiness is something that I think about a lot. And you actually wrote a great newsletter a couple weeks ago about this. And so, talk to me a little bit more about how do we define success,
Hmm.
in work and life, and how do we limit the upside. Meaning, like, how do we say, okay, it's never going to be perfect, but it's good enough in terms of the success that we've achieved?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's important to kind of recognize what your current understanding of success is, and there's a socially conditioned, definition of success, that you've achieved certain external goals with respect to getting a certain, bank account is a certain size, your business is a certain size, you've got the trophy partner, you've got the perfect relationship. um, you have all of these things that are markers of success. So the first thing is to just recognize the sort of perverse trance that those belief systems embody. Okay, they're fundamentally, externals. So we really have to work against that kind of internal programming and coding, and turn inside and become familiar with and reacquainted with our deepest self and what we truly want in our life. And really, for everybody, it's very simple. I mean, happiness is just being okay with ourselves, just
Hmm.
really being content with what our life is all about, without fighting or resisting the conditions of our life. That's kind of the structure of happiness, if you will,
Hmm.
is like that. So when you redefine, you can redefine success as finding what is most deep within yourself and doing work in the world that really fulfills you. And that's just work that fulfills you. It doesn't have to fulfill anybody else. It doesn't have to serve any sort of ideal or goal that anybody else has. um, but really is work that you really enjoy doing every day, and serves a bigger purpose than your ego. Fulfilling work always comes in here. That to me is a more helpful kind of orientation towards success.
Yeah, and I think the importance of internal work is really key here, and really like defining the external goals, which are constantly shifting. So, the goals I had in the beginning of my career when I was young and I had little children are different now. My kids are older. I'm more settled in my life and career, so my goals have changed. I also am getting to the point where I'm thinking about, retirement age and things. What are my goals in those days? And so, how much money do I need between now and then? And so I think it's really identifying for your own purpose. I think the point you're making too is not letting outside forces of society really dictate what is success.
Hmm.
And I find in business that there's a lot of people that they're never satisfied no matter how much they have. They just want more and more and more. And I don't think that's the way for happiness. I know people that are super successful that aren't happy, and I know people that are barely making 50 grand a year and they're very happy.
Yeah.
So I think that's really our own internal dialogue, and this is why talk about how the four truths really help us put those goals into perspective.
Yeah. Well, this is really a good segue into the fourth noble truth, which is the Eightfold Path. And that's the prescription. How do we relieve ourselves from suffering? Which is another way to say, how do we become happy? How do we cultivate happiness? Right. And that's a kind of a matrix or a format for living in alignment with your deeper self, right? So we call it right view, right intention, right livelihood, right action. There's eight kind of dimensions of living your life internally and externally. So relation to your own experience and a relation to the world that puts you in alignment with this deeper self. And when you do that, that's how you do it. You
Mm-hmm.
It's that is the path to happiness. And there's a lot to look at there, because we've got eight different dimensions and all sorts of ways to kind of do it right and do it wrong and be out of alignment and misstep and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
this practice is very rich and interesting.
Yeah, and we're going to go into a lot more detail on each one of the Eightfold Path, and there's a lot to be learned in that. And there's other the good thing about the Buddha is he made a lot of lists, and these we have a lot of content to cover here, but there's something deep to be learned. This is what I get out of this in each one, just in right view by itself. I read a whole book on right view one time, and it was just really enlightening. I mean, I just learned so much about it. And there was many times after that when something would come up in work or life, and I would think, what's right view in this situation? And so I would learn how to apply that truth to the particular situation. And so I think that part of what we're going to, learn here is we're not just going to learn what they do, but how do we apply them to our daily life and to lessen our suffering. So do you have any, good examples of something, work or life related that, the Eightfold Path has helped you through?
Every day.
Right.
Every day. Yeah. I think the primary orientation that the Four Noble Truths generally, give me is that I realize that I'm adding something to my experience, right? The not okayness kind of initiates, reactive, uh, emotional drives, within me. So I get angry when things don't go my way, or I get frustrated if somebody doesn't understand me. All of these are things that the Buddha called the second arrow. So he said, the first arrow is just our uncomfortable or painful experiences in the world, right? But what we do as humans is we follow the first arrow with a second arrow, which is all of our attempts to change or manipulate or resist the first arrow. It's how we're dealing with that first arrow discomfort, and the second arrow causes much more suffering than the first arrow does.
Mm-hmm.
So just that perspective, I could be in a conversation. I used to, when I had a boss, kind of been my own boss for a while, but when I had a boss and, I found that he wasn't understanding me, or I thought he was, off the wall, which I've had, a bunch of bosses who were off the wall, and I felt they
Mm-hmm.
weren't, looking at things in the right way. And then I would start to get angry and argumentative because of that. But I realized that my reactivity was just making things worse,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Now that didn't mean that the guy didn't get what I was saying. I mean, he definitely didn't get what I was saying, but I was just making it worse by kind of fighting with him and arguing with
Mm-hmm.
him. And so when I kind of got into a place of, say, listening, it's like, let me really, instead of fighting what you're saying, let me listen into what you're saying and where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And almost instantly you realize when you're in a disagreement or an argument with someone is they've got an emotional need that they're coming from, that they're trying to trying to express. Like, and in a lot of cases it comes out of fear, right? And then I came to
Mm-hmm.
see a boss, the CEO of a company is oftentimes has a base level existential, I can't let this company go down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got to make the right decision in this place. So as leaders, it's a great, it's a great lesson is your fear is adding something to your judgment and to your decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's another application is I would find, I'd face a situation and my first reaction might be very fear based.
Mm-hmm.
And when I just took a breath and realized, okay, let's not make this out of fear. Let me look at this very clearly. I realized I could make a much sounder decision.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up taking a breath, because I want to stress the importance of meditation along this whole journey here. Is that the more we can meditate on things and think about, like, our breathing, and then really think about the issue at hand. A lot of times I'll sit down and meditate, and something will come up about that I've been dealing with, and I'll work through the Eightfold Path, and I'll be like, okay, how am I reacting to this situation? And more importantly, or equally as importantly, how is the other person dealing with it? What is their suffering? So I think one of the things I've learned that's so important is, the more that I've recognized this in myself and understood this path here, the more I can look at the person across from me and try and understand what they're going through. My job a lot of these days is in venture capital, and every person that sends me a pitch deck has a dream. They also have anxiety and stress and not enoughness, and things like that. And so how can I alleviate their suffering? How can I provide the tools that they need? I love sending books to people and say, read this book, and then we'll talk about it in a couple months. And so, it's not just like what's going on in my world, but what's going on in the other person, that's with me here, and how can I help them along the
Yeah.
journey? So I think that's a gift that you get with this, is that you help yourself, but you're also able to help other people a lot more.
Yeah, that's right on, Scott. Yeah, really beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And so I also want to talk about listening, deep listening, and how that really, because really understanding, the suffering is so important. And so how do we, I like talk less, listen more. Sometimes I think about that a lot, but how do we, put ourselves in a position where we're not talking as much about ourselves, but we're really listening to the other person so that we can help them?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to listen to yourself, right? So if you're in a place of lack, okay, and then someone's talking to you, that's going to feed your sense of, okay, I need to get something from this. Like, what am I getting from this? And you're preparing your answer, right? So you have to really be honest and tune in to what your needs are, or what you think your needs are, and what your feelings are. Are you scared? Are you in a place of lack? Are you activated and reactivated, in this place? So deep listening starts with really checking in with yourself and listening to yourself and where you're at. And then um, give your capacity to everybody that you're talking to, like you say, and not have, I mean, most of us, we don't listen very deeply. We're
Mhm.
we're planning what we're going to say, when that person takes a pause. I mean, we all do this. It's very natural what we're going to come in. So it's real practice just to resist that, to not feed that, and just listen. Oh, have some curiosity, not only about what they're saying, the conceptual, level of what they're saying, because we get all thinky and heady all the time, but to really hear them, allow them to express, or even energetically manifest, right? Because sometimes people don't even know what they're feeling, but they're energetically manifesting it all the time, right? So listen in body and mind to where this person is coming from, what they're saying, and then really come from a place of response that's like, oh, okay, I really hear you, and this is what I have to say. Um, it's a practice.
Yes, it is a practice. And I think one thing that I've gotten out of the practice is basically being resilient and learning from failures, learning from setbacks. And this is where the four truths really help me out, because, I know that there's a way out of it. And I know that actually it's impermanent. That's
Yeah.
another key lesson here, is that whatever I'm going through today is going to change tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we can never swim in the same river twice. It's always different. And so that's something that the path has really helped me understand, is that, yes, I'm going through this. Why am I going through this? And by the way, there's a way out of it, and it's not going to last forever. Nothing does. And so
Nothing does.
that's really helps me get through tough days. I go to bed at night, I'm like, oh, this was a crappy day, but you know what? Tomorrow, if I wake up in the morning and I can see and I can breathe and I can walk, I'm going to be okay. It'll be a different type of a day. So that's really, one of the key learnings that I've gotten out of this.
That's right at the heart of it, Scott, is to be really comfortable and accepting of the impermanence of everything. And what we tend to do is we hold on to the things we like and we want to keep them around, and we push away the things that we don't like, right? But if we look at it, the things that we don't like are going to go on their own, and the things that we like are also going to go on their own. Everything ultimately is going to go, including our life. So
Yeah.
if we really just accept that, um, that's where the happiness comes from.
Yeah, and I think again, it all, and this is going to come up a lot. It applies both in your personal life and your work life, because nothing lasts forever in business. I mean, I've learned that when I was a young guy and working, I thought I'd be doing the same thing forever, and now I've done 5 different things, and I imagine there'll be more coming. And that's really helped me with the change that's come, in my business life and personal life. Like, I've been able to deal with it better, as opposed to being afraid of change. We know that it's coming. And so I'm not holding on to a specific, type of business or team that I'm with or anything like that. I'm okay when it changes. And so I've been much more adaptable, I guess is the right word, to life changes. And I think that's a key attribute.
It is, and both of us are entrepreneurs, and this is right at the heart of the entrepreneurial spirit. Most entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs, so they've had successes and failures and things that go for a while and things that don't, and that's baked into the nature of being a good entrepreneur, is to be able to ride the waves up and down, and to enjoy the process.
And and I'm also attracted to startups a lot. I can't help it. I like new shiny objects. And
Yeah,
the nature of a startup is it's changing, it's evolving.
right,
It's
right,
just going to be, this is where we are today, but we're going to this place in the future. And the other thing that I've learned is that it's never a straight line. It's always a jagged line, and it never really goes exactly where we think it's going to go. Sometimes it's
right.
better, sometimes it's worse. And you just got to learn how to roll with it. I mean, you can't get too caught up in the success. It's about the journey, and I haven't, not everything I've done has been successful, but I learned something from every situation that I've been in, and I've learned how to deal with people. And I think one of the gifts of this teaching is that I've gotten better at dealing with, whatever new team or new people that come into my world. I'm better able to deal with that because I have these skill sets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna be talking a lot more about this in our next episode. We're gonna talk about the second and third noble truths and how they apply directly to our work and life. And we're gonna give you guys a lot more to learn from. Um, at the end of every episode, we're also going to provide some resources for you, and Paul's going to do a little meditation. So I have a book here, Paul, that I'd like to tell everyone about. It's called The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching, by my favorite guy, Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. And this book is really great because it really, transforming suffering into peace, joy, and liberation. And it really goes into detail on the Four Noble Truths. And there's a lot of literature out there. So I highly recommend that you read books and study. And also feel free to send us feedback and ask us questions. In future episodes, we'll be dealing with those questions. And we'd love to have your interaction. So, Paul, it's up to you now. Let's do a little meditation to close out this episode.
Okay. Our meditation for today is going to be what is lacking. Okay, so I'll invite you, Scott, and our listeners to close your eyes, tune in, tune into your breath. First, give 3 breaths, extended, an extended inhale and an extended exhale. And now turn your mind to the question, what is lacking in this moment? If something comes to you specifically, investigate that. Is that true? Can you be with that absence fully? Is there any problem in this moment? If you're hungry, can you just feel the hunger? Thirsty, just feel the thirst. If you have an itch, scratch the itch. If you have some soreness, allow the soreness. What is lacking? And now we can come out of that brief meditation. This is something you can do whenever you have a few moments, is just to tune in and investigate.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. That was really great. Awesome. So we're going to conclude today's episode. We encourage you to listen to our other podcasts and reach out to Paul, subscribe to his excellent newsletter, visit his website. And I highly recommend Paul as a teacher. He's helped me tremendously. So please reach out if you're interested in some coaching lessons. And thank you very much, Paul. This was a great episode.
Yep, I've enjoyed it, Scott. Thanks
All
everyone
right.
for listening.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration into Zen Buddhism and its transformative influence on work and life. We hope you'll subscribe, share, and comment wherever you get your podcasts. May your journey be one of continuous growth and mindful living. From all of us here at Game of Zen, wishing you peace and prosperity on your path ahead.